This is episode number 8 of the Mind Body Masters podcast. I'm your host, Jake Curry. Now, today's episode is titled How to Heal Acne from the Inside Out. So today we're going to get really practical. We're going to dive in really deep and look at the causes of acne or pimples from the German medicine perspective, from a mind-body perspective. We're going to look at the specific links of stress and emotional conflicts that cause this particular skin condition. Not only that, not only giving you a whole new understanding of the causes of acne, but we're going to look at how you can practically start to resolve this stuff yourself. We're going to look at one of the most vicious positive feedback loops that a lot of people get stuck in, particularly with their self-talk, that continues to perpetuate cycles of acne for them. So if you're someone who has struggled with acne or pimples, this episode is going to be for you, and it's going to give you the ability to interrupt this pattern, break the cycle, and to start healing your acne from the inside out. So make sure you stay tuned. Hello, my name is Jake Curry. I specialize in the mind-body connection and teaching people how to heal themselves. This podcast is going to show you exactly how to become a true mind-body master, so that you can break free from the old emotions and patterns in your mind that have kept you stuck. When you're able to do this, you can heal yourself physically from the inside out, unlock your true potential, and live a life of flow, experiencing inspiration and energy like never before. If you're ready to learn how to harness the healing powers of your mind and develop the tools to become emotionally bulletproof, well, stay tuned as we heal, grow, and evolve. So if you are like most people, chances are you've had acne at one point or another. You've had some pimples, you might have had some whiteheads, some blackheads, whatever you want to call it. But for a lot of people, acne isn't something that just finishes as a teenager. It's something that continues well on into adulthood. And for these people, it can be something that's quite distressing. So we're going to be looking at the specific emotional and biological causes that pertain to acne. Now, I use the term then biological conflict, and you would have heard me use the term emotional conflicts or stress, but I wanted to just clear something up from previous episodes, which is going to give you a more rounded understanding. So when we experience something distressing and unexpected in our environment, something that's emotionally distressing and catches us off guard, that causes a change in the psyche, the brain, and the organ all at the same time. So when we experience something distressing in our environment, our body is creating meaningful adaptations to help you cope with that change in the environment. And if we look at animals, it makes a lot of sense. You see a change in the environment and you'll see the body's adaptations as being smart and meaningful and purposeful. Guys, nature is intelligent, and this is what this is all about. Teaching you to understand how smart your body is and how it is doing everything it can to help you cope with changes in the environment. Now, acne is no different. So we're going to look at the particular conflicts that cause acne, and also one of the most vicious cycles that a lot of people get caught in, which keeps them having regular bouts of acne. And this is tied in closely with your self-talk. So if you've ever sort of come across this concept of self-talk and how that pertains to acne or other diseases in particular, well, this is going to give you a whole new insight. So let's just go back, and as I was mentioned in previous episodes, and by the way, if you haven't listened to those foundational episodes, make sure you go back. You're going to get sick of me saying this, but make sure you go back and listen to those foundational episodes, because it's going to make everything that I talk about today and every other episode going forward make more sense. So the German medicine perspective of the body is that when we experience something unexpected that we couldn't see coming, it causes changes to occur in the body to help us cope. And those changes occur through two phases. There's the stress phase, and once the conflict is finished or resolved, well, then our body goes into the healing phase. And in the last episode, we talked about pain and how during the stress phase, muscle fibers are breaking down. And I likened it to exercise. So during the stress phase, it's like doing 1,000 burpees. Your muscle fibers are breaking down in response to that stress. And then when you stop doing the burpees, well, then your body switches into the healing phase. And that's when you get the inflammation, the pain, the swelling of the muscle fibers. And that's when people typically associate having symptoms. So acne follows a similar principle. So during the stress phase, instead of muscle fibers breaking down, the corium skin, the skin just under the surface, is starting to create cell proliferation, so growing more and more cells. Now, during this phase, you wouldn't notice any particular symptoms. You wouldn't notice anything really wrong. You might notice a few bumps in the skin, but nothing that you would really call acne. Maybe a few blackheads. But it's when the conflict resolves that the skin, the extra skin cells that were growing actually start to break down, and you get the redness, you get the inflammation, you get some pus and all this kind of stuff as the skin goes into this repair mode. So let's look at one of the types of conflicts that cause acne. There's a couple major ones. I'm going to talk about one first, and then I'm going to talk about the second one and how that ties in with this vicious loop that a lot of people get stuck in, which perpetuates regular cycles of acne. So the first type of biological conflict that causes acne is what's called an attack conflict. So you might have heard the saying, oh, you've got really thick skin. And this is so pertinent. This is so cool. Some of these old sayings, how closely they align with these biological conflicts. So if you were to get attacked, that is something that is distressing. And this can be a physical attack, or it can be like a verbal attack, for example. But in the instance of being attacked, your skin would actually cause more cells to grow and the cells in the corium skin to proliferate, to form a physical barrier between you and the thing that's attacking you, whether it be a baton in a protest, for example, or whether it's some form of verbal abuse. So these attack conflicts, the body is actually helping you cope with that emotionally distressing situation by creating a physical barrier between you and the attacker. Your skin starts to actually grow. Now, when the attack finishes, all of those extra cells in the corium skin that were proliferating and growing are no longer required, and the body's going to return back to normal. So what the body does is it will cause all of those cells to there'll be inflammation, there'll be swelling, there'll be redness, there'll be probably a bit of pain and sensitivity, as well as pus as this bacteria starts to break down the extra skin cells. And this is when you typically get acne. This is when you get the pimples. This is when you get the whiteheads. This is when you get all of the stuff that we would commonly associate with pimples or acne. Now, a lot of people get acne in their teen years, and one of the ways, there's a theory of hormones causing that, and I'm not going to go into that too much because it's not really my area of expertise, but one of the things that we know is that verbal attacks are something that commonly cause acne, and teens are often particularly vulnerable to this kind of stuff because they're trying to find their place, and they're getting to know themselves and where they fit in and all this kind of stuff. And so often, like bullying and things like that, if there are verbal attacks, that can be one of the things that causes acne. And I'm postulating that this is why a lot of teenagers develop acne, is because they're subject to, firstly, a lot of verbal attacks like name calling and all this kind of stuff, but also because it pertains to the loop that I'm about to talk to, the vicious loop. So things like verbal abuse or insults or unwanted sexual remarks, these kinds of things, this can be the unexpected stress or emotional conflict which can start the attack conflict, the process of acne, causing the cells in the corium skin to grow, to form a barrier between you and those harsh words, for example. So when that conflict resolves, then we go into, obviously, the healing symptoms and the acne that we talked about before. Now, this is where things get interesting. So one of the other causes, or the other biological conflicts that cause acne, is what's called a soiled conflict. So a soiled conflict really is what it sounds like. It's feeling dirty, it's feeling unclean. So often when people go into the healing symptoms of acne and they get all the pus and the pimples and the redness and all the stuff, often their self-talk comes in and creates a second conflict. Instead of looking at the skin and going, oh, cool, my skin's healing something, they'll look at it and go, ugh, I look disgusting, I look gross, I feel so unattractive, I feel horrible. And this is something that creates a second conflict, creating a further change in the skin. The skin's creating more of a barrier because you feel dirty and disgusting. And so the skin's like trying to get that dirty, disgusting thing off your face. But in reality, it's creating more acne. So this is the vicious loop that people get stuck in. And I'm going to talk to you about a client that I had recently and her issues with acne and how she actually broke that cycle to start letting her body heal and to start healing her skin and her acne from the inside out. So I just want to stop and pause there for a minute. And if you're someone who struggles with acne, what do you say to yourself when you look in the mirror and see a whole heap of pimples on your face? Think about it. Like, are you being really kind to yourself, or are you saying things like, oh, I look disgusting today. My skin is horrible. Like, I just look really, really gross. And chances are you're probably not even aware that you're thinking these thoughts. But what those thoughts do is they create that second conflict, the soiled conflict, the dirty, unclean conflict. And that perpetuates the cycle of acne. So this client of mine, she had acne on her face, and she was doing exactly that. She wasn't sure of what initially caused it, but what happened was every time she would go into the healing phase of acne, so getting the redness and the inflammation and all the symptoms that we typically associate, is she would look at herself and go, oh, I look gross, I look disgusting, my skin is revolting. She'd touch her skin with her hands, and every time she'd touch her skin and feel the bumps and the lumps and all the rest of it, it would again make her think, oh, I feel so gross, my skin is bad, my skin is really revolting, it's disgusting, blah, 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 all of this stuff. And she didn't realize that she was thinking those thoughts until we kind of made her look at it. And this is the thing, guys, is when you can start to become consciously aware of the unconscious patterns that you're running in your brain and your body, well, then that's when you can interrupt these patterns and really start to heal. And I'm going to talk a lot more about this because it's something that I see as being so important in terms of people's healing, is your perception of how your body's healing. So I think in a future episode, I'll be talking about the placebo effect and the nocebo effect and how your thoughts around healing actually influence your healing. So for this lady, she was obviously an adult with acne, and that was quite distressing for her. And so all we asked her to do was to, instead, whenever she looked in the mirror, I wanted her to catch herself thinking these horrible thoughts. I wanted her to catch herself thinking, oh, I'm disgusting, my skin's really bad, all of these kinds of things, because she didn't actually know that she was doing it. And if you're someone who struggles with acne, like I said, chances are you don't know that you're doing this either. And my intention for this podcast is to help you to understand how some of these patterns of self-talk actually keep you stuck and having regular bouts of pimples and acne. So that's exactly what she did. She realized, and the first step was for her to actually realize what was going on and how she was thinking. And she came back to me and she was like, yeah, I do all of those things. I say that I look disgusting. I feel gross. I say that my skin is revolting. And she didn't realize that was actually part of what was causing her acne. So all we did in that act was, I said to her, is you just need to be consciously aware of you thinking these thoughts when you look in the mirror, and you need to choose a different set of thoughts. So instead of looking at yourself going, oh, I'm disgusting, I'm gross, all of these things, and creating that further soiled conflict in the skin, how can you look at it different? And by understanding the process that the body goes through in the stress phase of the skin, when there's extra cells being developed and all of the rest of it, and then in the healing phase when you get the inflammation and the swelling, I said, what if you just look at the pimples and the acne as a healing symptom? Your skin is healing because we know that's exactly what it was doing. So what she did is she went on a mission to interrupt that positive feedback loop, and instead of thinking those horrible thoughts about herself and her skin, she just reminded herself gently that her skin was healing, that her skin was repairing, that the acne and the pimples and the redness was a good thing because it is her body healing and repairing. So this is how she was able to break the cycle. And today her skin's fantastic. She doesn't have any issues with acne at all, and that's largely because she interrupted this feedback loop and she was able to stop reactivating this conflict and stop making herself feel so unattractive. And by doing so, it allowed her body to heal from the inside out. It allowed her body to not only finish the healing process and allow her skin to return to normal, but it also stopped her from creating further instances into the future. So I just want to touch on that self-talk. And if you are someone who looks at yourself in the mirror and goes, oh, I'm so unattractive, I look gross, my skin is horrible, just think about it. Would you, if your friend had a whole heap of pimples and acne, would you be saying those kinds of things to them? Would you be telling them that they look disgusting and gross? And if you're a kind human, chances are you would say, of course not. I'd be like, oh, don't worry about it. Just, it's okay. It doesn't look that bad or whatever. You wouldn't be going in and creating more verbal abuse. And we talked at the start about how pimples and acne are caused by an attack conflict or a soiled conflict. But think about how those thoughts, those remarks that you make about yourself when you look in the mirror, how actually you're creating more verbal abuse for yourself. You're attacking yourself. And we can see why this cycle just perpetuates. So one of the things that I would say is just stop it. Stop being so hard on yourself. Stop looking at yourself in that way and stop saying how unattractive or gross you are, how bad your skin is. And I can tell you that if you're able to stop doing that, if you're able to become consciously aware of that pattern, your skin is going to heal. Your skin is going to finish this process and you're going to go back to having lovely skin once more. So if I can summarize how to do that in 3 steps, it is firstly understand that, so number 1 would be understand that acne and the pimples and all of that stuff, when it's at its worst, it's actually in the healing process. Okay, so by understanding some of the German medicine principles and understanding, you can understand that the pimples are actually in the healing process. So if you were just to leave them alone and not get into all of that crappy self-talk and self-abuse, well then your skin will just continue to heal and be done with it. So that is the first step, understand this process. The second step is to become consciously aware of the unconscious thought patterns you have about the acne and your unconscious self-talk. So when I say self-talk, it's like, what do you say when you're talking to yourself? There's a fantastic book which is titled exactly that, which I highly recommend you read. I've forgotten the name of the author. I'll pop it in the show notes. But what to say when you talk to yourself is a great book to look at. So step 2 is become consciously aware of all of the negative self-talk that you have around your skin. All of the things that you say to yourself when you look in the mirror, all of the things that you think and feel when you touch your skin or when you feel acne coming on. So that's number 2. Look at all of those patterns, because Eckhart Tolle talks about when you are able to shine the light of consciousness on an unconscious pattern, well then it starts to lose its power. And this is exactly the case with this. And lastly is to interrupt the pattern. So instead of going through that positive feedback loop of having acne in the healing phase and then going, oh, I look disgusting, I'm horrible, my skin is gross and all this, and then creating a further either attack conflict or creating either a further soiled conflict, interrupt that pattern by making a conscious decision to change your languaging and to change your self-talk around your skin. So one of the things that I suggest to people is go, instead of looking at your skin and going, oh, there's something really bad with my skin, it's this, it's that, go, my skin is healing. My skin is healing and it's doing exactly what it needs to be doing. Thank you, skin. That's really, really amazing that my body is able to do that. And have some appreciation for your body. Your body's actually helping you to create a thick skin from the abuse that you've likely been throwing at yourself. So I hope if you can master those 3 steps, so understand the process of acne, become aware of your unconscious self-talk and interrupt that pattern, you will be able to heal your acne from the inside out. So I hope you found this useful, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of questions that come in for this. So if you have any questions on this, please send me an email at info@mindbodymasters.com and I will be sure to get back to it. But I know that by understanding this process and interrupting this pattern, you're going to have some great success at starting to break the cycle of having regular adult acne. And I know for a lot of people, this is a massive thing. If you can break that pattern, you can really start to feel more attractive, feel more confident in yourself. And above all, you can start to develop a real inner ally. Instead of having a really horrible self-critic and someone who's really mean and self-talk that's really horrible, you can start to develop a real nice inner ally, someone who motivates you, someone who inspires you by having some really positive self-talk. So good luck with that. Let me know how you get on. And if you have found this episode useful, please share it with other people that might be struggling with acne, because I know that this information can really help people shift and really help people start to heal themselves from the inside. So please share this podcast episode with anyone who struggles with acne, because I know that it is going to help them. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to episode number 8. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to stay up to date with all of the latest episodes, and I look forward to catching you again in the next episode.